Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to discuss a brilliant, absolutely fantastic marketing move made by Intel recently that showcases their tremendous products. I can't even say this with a straight face. Okay, so in short, Intel's marketing geniuses, with the company feeling a little bit threatened by Apple's new M1 chips and M1 powered laptops, came out with this boneheaded campaign to showcase the multiple advantages of Intel powered machines as opposed to the MacBooks. And this is Intel flexing those marketing muscles once again. And I'm saying that in the most sarcastic way possible. Last time we heard of them doing some boneheaded move like this was back in 2018 at Computex. If you guys recall, when they demoed a i9 28 core processor that could reach 5 gigahertz in all cores simultaneously, and casually forgot to mention the fact that A, it was overclocked to the extreme, B, in order for it to function properly and not melt itself to death, it needed an industrial grade cooling system, and C, that it wasn't even destined for the gamer market or the consumer market at all. Now, these latest commercials don't go to that extreme of dishonesty, but I think are a little bit disingenuous, and the reaction to the clips here on YouTube has been, well, let's say not the best. At least Intel left to their credit, they left the comment section and the like section on for these videos, but the reaction overall is not that great. I consider the clips to be generally pretty good. They star Jason Long, the actor who also played the Mac in the I'm a Mac versus PC commercials. Great actor. They're well shot, they're made to look amateurish, so to speak. But if you want amateurish videos, you can get them right here. I mean, you don't really need to watch their commercials, just watch the videos on my channel. Jokes aside, I think the campaign is half decent. It focuses on the stuff that Intel powered laptops can actually provide as opposed to the current M1 Macs. And they also showcase the versatility of the Intel powered Windows laptop ecosystem as opposed to that of Apple. And it's legitimate to a certain extent. Some of the clips I'm okay with, but the broad idea I'm not a fan of. And they're also ignoring some critical aspects in these comparisons, which you'd expect. It's a commercial that they fund, obviously, but still they're ignoring the elephant in the room. Now, I'm not bashing on the actor in any way. I've seen some really nasty comments. The guy's just doing his job, and he's doing a good job at it. It's just that the whole premise of the thing is a little bit of a skewed reality, obviously. So for the most part, some of the stuff that's being said in the commercials is at least partly true. So Apple does have a little bit of a dongle problem, like the Mac here has only 2 Thunderbolt ports. But that's also true on the Windows side of things. I mean, you can get PCs that have very few ports built in. And if you really want PCs, laptops with more ports, you usually have to shell out a lot of money. And also, I'm certain that the successor products to these current gen MacBooks are going to have more ports. In fact, the 14-inch and 16-inch M1X MacBooks that are being rumored out there, and I did a video on that you can watch on my channel, those are supposed to have a myriad more ports. That's expanding on the I/O of the current M1 MacBooks, okay? So, but yeah, the dongle thing was a problem, to a certain extent still is. And it's a jab at Apple, I get it. Then Jason uses a dual screen laptop powered by Intel. Okay, I get it, it's a commercial, we can live with that. They also poke fun at Apple with the fact that their laptops support more screen outputs, and that's correct. The M1 doesn't have great external screen output at this moment. True. Another valid commercial is the one that gamers use Windows platforms almost exclusively. I've never heard of people gaming on Macs, and Apple hasn't really focused on this area at all with their products. Their computers have never been designed for gamers from the get-go. So yeah, again, it's a commercial. I get that part as well. Another part is where he uses a touchscreen and the MacBooks don't have it. Macs don't have this because I've seen multiple times where Apple execs have come up and said that it's not a focus for them because they consider it suboptimal and not something that they want to offer. Similarly, the two-in-one thing, yeah, it's good, and it does exist on the Windows side of things and doesn't exist on the Mac side of things. I get it, that's an advantage. If you want a two-in-one, of course, you're not going to be able to get that from a Mac. True. Also, then Jason picks up in one of the other clips, he picks up a Windows computer and it uses Face Unlock. That's fantastic, but I'm sure Apple will bring Face ID to some of its products in the near future from the little desktop and laptop space as well. And yeah, poking fun at Apple for not having Face Unlock on any of their computers, yeah, maybe you can go with that. But the whole thing that I find disingenuous is that each time Jason goes and like, oh, there it's a PC and it's a laptop. Oh my god, it has Intel inside. I've never seen people react like that in the real life. I mean, yeah, okay, generally tech enthusiasts will ask, but nobody really cares. At the end of the day, and indeed, Intel has the dominant position through, you can say, legacy contacts with manufacturers in the space, or they've been accused of bribery here and there in keeping AMD away from laptops. But yeah, okay, Intel powers a great deal of Windows machines. That's fantastic. But the whole series is missing the elephant in the room. And I think there are a few elephants in the room, mostly, but there's a big one. Performance, and namely, critically, performance per watt, which is where M1 trashes every single Intel product out there right now. So in order to understand a little bit why Intel is doing this, we need to understand the cause, which is Apple's transitioning away from Intel chips and moving to their own silicon, right? They've announced this move last year at WWDC and then proceeded to introduce the first products with their own silicon, the M1 Max, in November of last year. And I have one right here, right? The one I'm using for my entire channel, for all of my work, is the M1 powered MacBook Pro 13-inch. In order to understand Apple's current transition, we need to look at its past one. Back in 2005, Steve Jobs announced that they're transitioning away from PowerPC chips and moving to Intel's chips for all of their lineup. And today's transition is basically a play-by-play reenactment of the one we got more than a decade ago. The main impetus that Steve Jobs quoted for this was the fact that Apple wanted to build and offer better products in the future. And he put out a typical Apple slide, kind of abstract, showing that in terms of performance per watt, Intel was greatly superior to PowerPC. Basically, if you watch the M1X video I did, we already discussed this, but I'm going to discuss it here as well. Basically, in terms of performance per watt, Apple's silicon, the M1, is without equal in the industry. For reference, in Cinebench and Geekbench, it compares favorably, so goes toe-to-toe with Intel chips that have a TDP of 125 watts. All the while, the Apple M1 has a 25 watt TDP. So it uses much less power, 5 times less power, to have similar performance. This is incredible. And this is basically on par with the exact same graph that Steve Jobs presented with moving from PowerPC to Intel. Coincidence or not, during the initial move from PowerPC to Intel, Steve also showed that they had been building Mac OS X behind the scenes to run seamlessly on both architectures. Guess what? Last year's Mac OS Big Sur is the exact same thing. It runs perfectly fine on Intel and on the M1 chips as well. So it was optimized behind the scenes from the get-go to allow Apple to do this transition. And this transition is giving Intel a black eye in the eye of the public. Because back in 2006, when Steve Jobs announced the first Mac products to feature Intel processors inside, they made a typical big show of it. They had then CEO Paul Otellini, CEO of Intel, walk onto the stage dressed in a typical Intel bunny suit, which coincidentally Apple had made fun of a few years prior, and Mr. Ottolini proceeded to hand Steve Jobs a CPU wafer and say that they're ready, and then went on to give a speech saying, quote, that he's happy that the world's most innovative computer company, Apple, is joining forces with the world's most innovative chip maker, at that time, Intel. So this was a big deal for Intel. Mr. Ottolini went to great length to ensure he got Apple as a customer for Intel's chips. He famously dropped the need for Apple to label the Macs as having Intel inside, only to get them to agree to the deal. So it was a happy deal for everyone. Apple's last year's transition away from Intel is basically the complete opposite of that. I mean, if there's such thing as bad publicity, this is it. Intel just got ditched, and Apple said, we're going alone and we're gonna make our own chips, which are gonna be better than what you guys can give us. And promptly came out with a product that proved that's exactly the case and that they can do it. Now, before we discuss other things, I want to thank you for watching the video, and if you're new here, I'd greatly appreciate if you find the video informative at all, give it a like and subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell notification. This will greatly help popularize the channel and reach a larger audience. Now, why should Intel be concerned at all with Apple transitioning away from their chips? Not a big deal, right? They should be concerned because Apple is a major player in every single market that it competes in. You don't believe me? You don't have to be a fan or a hater, you just have to look at the numbers. In the phone market, Apple is totally killing it. Last year, on the back of the great success of the iPhone 12 series, they once again became the largest smartphone manufacturer in the world. For the whole of 2020, Apple not only has the 2 best-selling phones in the world, but out of the top 10, they have 5 entries. And if you look closely at this list, you're gonna notice that, surprise or not, Apple sells the most expensive products on this list. So their phones are the most expensive on the list. Apple sells a ton of them, and they have a very healthy margin. I think they have the largest margin in phones of any manufacturer in the market. In the tablet market, we have a similar situation. Apple shows growth year over year, and they have more than 30% market share, with Samsung a distant second. And again, Apple sells some of the more expensive tablets on the market. Again, we have a great market share and great margins to go along with it. In the last but not least, in the wearables market, again, Apple is killing it. They have the biggest market share, they have the biggest growth year over year, and they make the most profits. On top of that, Apple has millions of people buying its iCloud subscriptions for cloud storage because they sell products that have limited storage and that's non-expandable. But all in all, this strategy has generated enormous sales for them and consistent revenue. That's a big deal. So basically, Intel needs to fear Apple because, one, Apple has the engineering chops to come out with a great product. The M1 has proved that. So they have the technical ability to engineer a chip that's very, very competitive, and they hit the ground running with the M1s. Secondly, in every single market they compete in, they are serious about it. They put money into it, and they have tons of money to put into research and development in this, and they are near the top in every single category. So you can bet that Apple has an entire lineup and a huge pipeline of products with their own silicon inside. They're not going to stop. The M1 was last year's release. We've already had numerous news and leaks about the successor being launched this year, the M1X, which will bring 14-inch and 16-inch laptops. I've discussed them at length here on the channel before. You can go watch that video or watch any other video from the great creators we have on YouTube who are saying the same thing. The M1X is going to be even better than the M1. Furthermore, this wasn't a half-baked release done by a company on a shoestring budget. This was a well-thought-out, well-planned release of a good product that's been successful from day one. Consider this, currently the M1 MacBooks hold a 0.8% market share for 2020, which you're gonna say, yeah, that's pathetic, right? Wrong. They released only 2 products, the Base Air and the 13-inch MacBook that I have here last year in November. Most of the sales that they did were for 1 month of the entire year, and they got a decent market share of all the total. Furthermore, a report done by marketing firm TrendForce says that Apple will reach an estimated 7% of the entire market for laptops this year. This is a 10-time increase. This is huge for them. And Intel will come under even more pressure because guess what? In the exact same research paper, TrendForce estimates that AMD's laptops will also take 20% market share this year. So Intel stands to lose a great deal from both these competitors. Basically, if I were in Intel's shoes, I would be hugely concerned today. On the one hand, in the last few years, they've been under immense pressure from AMD, who has come back being extremely successful. The Ryzen series of chips have taken the fight to Intel. They're more efficient, they're just as powerful, they're cheaper, and for instance, in the gaming market, which I follow quite intensely, a lot of people are shifting towards Ryzen products more and more. So this is a big problem for Intel. Now they have to also contend with Apple, whose products are also beating them on a lot of fronts. Let me put it to you this way. I have the M1 MacBook Pro right here. And I also have, for my day-to-day job, a very expensive business end machine. I think Lenovo or Dell, doesn't even matter. It's powered by a very high-level 11th Gen i7 with 16 gigs of RAM. And every time I use it, I would much rather be on the Mac. Even though, I'll be very clear here about this, I like Windows a great deal more than I like Mac OS. Maybe it's just muscle memory or me not getting used to Mac OS so easily after 20 plus years of using Windows. Whatever the case may be, I actually enjoy working on my MacBook a great deal more. Why is that? Well, as I've said before, the elephant in the room that Intel's commercials kind of skirt around, none of the laptops there have comparable battery life to the MacBooks. I can routinely work on this Pro for like 2 days without having to charge it. I can go and edit 4K videos on it for like 4 or 5 hours and it doesn't break a sweat. I don't have to plug in the charger and the performance is just as good. Plus, the entire time while it's doing this, it's nearly quiet. Now we go back to the whole power per watt thing. Why is it crucial? Well, because the M1 can achieve the exact same level of performance as many of Intel's chips in the high-end market, but while drawing immensely less power, this brings enormous advantages. First of all, it generates a lot less heat. Because it generates a lot less heat, Apple can forego a fan completely in the air, or like in the 13-inch MacBook Pro I have here, they put in a fan, but it's almost never on. Basically, this thing is almost always quiet. And again, we go to performance per watt as being critical, because guess what? If you achieve great performance while drawing less power, if you have a good battery size in the machine, it will last a great deal longer, allowing you to have a truly portable computer. This laptop I can actually use and go outside and edit videos on a park bench somewhere and not worry about battery life. My Intel-powered Windows machine, not so much. Another area where Intel should be concerned, and I think they kind of are, is business consumers. Okay, in gaming, Apple hasn't focused on gaming yet. I don't know if they ever will. I hope they do at some point. We don't know. But in the business side of things, currently, if you work in the corporate world, a great deal of the apps that you use for your day-to-day work, guess what? They work on browsers. We don't have that many dedicated desktop apps anymore. And browsers run just as fine on Apple's products. You will have, if Intel doesn't manage to catch up anytime soon, you're going to have corporations that switch their workforce from Windows-based laptops to Apple's laptops. Because there's a lot of reasons for that. If you buy a business-centered laptop powered by an Intel chip running Windows, it's not going to be cheap. You're talking about $1,500 and up. So the fact that the MacBooks are expensive Well, that becomes less of a discussion because if you're talking about $2,000 plus machines, guess what? Apple will have products in that category as well. Let's look at some of the conclusions for this, right? Kind of bleak so far, right? Well, not entirely. I'm actually a little bit optimistic. Even after seeing this whole ad campaign from Intel, this tells me that they're at least very aware of the problem that Apple can represent to them in the future, right? If Intel would have had absolutely no recognition of Apple whatsoever and would have continued in the manner that it's business as usual, I would have been very, very disappointed. And I'm telling you the truth. I think it's a great thing that Intel acknowledges the threat that Apple poses to them in this market. Why is that? This can be a shot in the arm for Intel to get their huge R&D budget that they spend each year and direct it more at good products, advancing their chips. They've been in a rut for years now. And I want Intel to bounce back from this. I want them to be competitive. Why? Why is that? I'm not a fanboy in this. I'm not dedicated to Apple or Intel or whoever. I'm dedicated to what brings me as the consumer the most value. And if we have a highly competitive market where Intel manages to bounce back and get back on track and bring super competitive products and takes the fight back to AMD and Apple now, we will have a market where we have options. That is excellent for us at the end as a consumer. Apple fanboy, Apple hater, Intel fan, it doesn't even matter at the end of the day. If we will get better chips that have more performance, give our laptops, for instance, better battery life, generate far less noise to no noise, generate far less heat, they're more user-friendly in general because of that. That's fantastic. We all get to benefit from this. So in this fight, right now, I'm happy that there's competition and I can't wait to see it play out because I remember the days when I was a kid and Intel and AMD were going at it. They were each bringing out new chips each year that kind of incrementally improved upon their competition, and you had prices going down massively year over year. We haven't had that in the better part of the last decade because Intel has been in such a dominant position. And guess what? Because they were in such a dominant position, they stagnated and the whole market stagnated with them. Granted, we've had performance improvements year over year, that's true, but prices haven't been coming down and the performance gains haven't been epic from one generation to the next. Intel has been stuck on the 14 nanometer process node for like 5 years. They've not really advanced the ball tremendously. The fact that Apple and AMD are now taking the fight to Intel and hopefully Intel bouncing back, this to me means that the market for PCs and laptops and that stuff and technology in general is going to look tremendously better in the next 5 to 6 years. We're going to have these guys competing to give us better and better products, which will be worth our money. All of that to me is a big win. Also, if Intel would change their marketing, that would be a win. I mean, I'd really like them to market their own products for what they are and not coming up with these idiotic, disingenuous campaigns where they have to lie and no, that's not what I want from them. I want from them to be a successful company that puts out competitive products that me as a consumer want to buy at the end of the day, right? Okay, thank you all for watching and I will see you next time.